We have some drinks as well. We've got a really great program for everyone today, so I appreciate everybody's attendance, as well as the Attorney General's office and House staff for helping put this event together for us today. And of course, we thank our state police and security detail for keeping everything running smoothly as well. That I'm going to go ahead and say a quick blessing on the meal, and then we can go ahead and get started eating. So if you could, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Lord, just thank you for all the blessings that you provide for us, and just please thank you for the meal that you have for us and all the hands that it took to prepare it and get it here today, dear Lord, and just be with each and every member that is here in attendance, as well as all of our guests as well, and please provide traveling mercies to all of our speakers as they travel to and from their destinations, dear Lord. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You can go ahead and get started with the meal.
If I can have everyone's attention for just a second. If I can have everyone's attention for just 1 second, I wanted to bring your attention to the note cards that are at each place. There should be pens and note cards. So if you have a question throughout the day that you'd like to ask, if you write it down.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming today. We've got, like I said, we've got a great lineup ready for you. If we could all find our seats. We're going to kick things off with our Attorney General Todd Rokita. Todd has always been a strong fighter on behalf of Hoosiers across the state, serving in multiple elected offices from Secretary of State, Congress, and now obviously as our Attorney General. He's worked tirelessly on enforcing our law and order, making sure that we do not have sanctuary cities here in Indiana, keeping true to our statute, working tirelessly on various issues surrounding immigration, other topics as well, and defending all the policy that we pass as a General Assembly. It is my honor to welcome our friend Todd Rokita.
Thank you, JD. I appreciate that introduction, and welcome to each and every one of you. I appreciate your interest in this subject matter and what we're going to talk about here today. There are state-level actions that we can and that we should be taking to help President Trump fix the crisis, frankly, created by the Biden administration, but also policies that have been going on far too long in America. And regardless of who the president is, the states do have, Indiana does have, an opportunity and a moral duty to combat illegal immigration permanently along with our federal partners. I also want to thank Speaker Houston and the House of Representatives for opening up their chamber for us today. The fact of the matter is, there is no country and therefore no Indiana if we don't have a defined border, one language, and a common culture. Therefore, the excuse can no longer be, well, that's just a federal issue, this illegal immigration. When 12 million illegal aliens, and that's just the ones that we know of, there could be a lot more and probably are a lot more, are allowed to pour across the southern border over just a 4-year span, and millions of others are flown here through different parole programs, it obviously creates a lot of problems at all levels of government and requires an all-of-government solution. And we are seeing these problems across Indiana in community after community. I'm hearing about them everywhere I go, and I know you are too. Every state is now a border state, so all of us need to get involved. We don't have time to waste, and we can't afford to fail to act for a second session in a row. That's why we've assembled a powerful coalition today, including top leaders not only like you from Indiana, but from the Trump administration, to address this crisis together. To start, I'm grateful for my partner, Governor Mike Braun, for his leadership and for joining us here today. Governor, thank you very much. We're also honored to be joined by White House Border Czar Tom Homan and former Acting United States Secretary of Homeland Security Chad Wolf, who will be sharing their expertise on this issue with us. I know both of them have important work to do and have insanely busy schedules, so I want to thank each of them for being with us today. I'm really looking forward to what they have to say about the broader immigration challenges we face as well, and the critical need for state and federal governments to work hand in hand to address this crisis. Their insights will help set the stage for the comprehensive approach that we need. Building on that foundation, Indiana has a unique opportunity to lead with bold state-level action. And that's why I'm proud to be partnering with J.D. Prescott on critical legislation appropriately named the Fairness Act, which stands for Fostering and Advancing Immigration Reforms Necessary to Ensure Safety and Security. Now, I want to be clear. This is not new legislation. This is the same legislation that was passed right here in the House chamber last session with overwhelming support, but stalled in the Senate without even a hearing. But I know Representative Prescott is set to carry it again this upcoming session, and I will be supporting it. And many of the immigration experts speaking here today, whether in the state or across the country, will be supporting it. So I encourage each of you to do so as well. It's the decisive state-level action Indiana urgently needs to restore safety, security, and fairness for every Hoosier community. From public safety to economic strains and social cohesion, the costs of illegal immigration hurt all of us. First and foremost, illegal immigration has enormous security costs because it undermines public safety by increasing crime and straining local resources. Consider the case of Monroe County, where an illegal alien named Manuel Lopez was released from jail despite a prior attempted rape charge. This year, after he was released, he allegedly attacked another woman on a Bloomington trail and is facing charges of attempted rape, criminal confinement, and battery. Now, had the sheriff of Monroe County honored a simple 48-hour ICE detainer, which I sent him before he released Lopez, this tragedy most likely would have been prevented, sparing a victim and saving taxpayers the cost of repeating incarceration. Had the Fairness Act been adopted years earlier, the likelihood of that woman being hurt would have dropped tremendously. Instead, the detainer was ignored, and a dangerous criminal who should have been deported was let back on the streets of a college town to inflict more damage. That's Indiana today. The Fairness Act would strengthen our anti-sanctuary city law by requiring local authorities to honor these federal immigration detainers. Cooperation with ICE should be part of every sheriff and every law enforcement's daily work. It should be routine. Second, there is also severe economic cost to Hoosier workers who have to compete with illegal aliens for jobs and wages, as well as more severe disruptions to labor markets generally caused by potential labor trafficking, which my office is actively looking into. There is a serious cost that cannot be ignored, especially for workers who live from paycheck to paycheck. Consider the story that happened at 7 chicken processing plants in Mississippi after an ICE raid in 2019 that deported 680 illegal aliens. After American job seekers flocked to an employment fair days after the raid in hopes of filling some of those now empty positions, those jobs were again filled, and maybe at a higher wage. We have the same kind of meat processing plants right here in Indiana. Who knows the amount of Hoosiers that could be employed if we weren't dealing with illegal alien labor trafficking. These deportations create job openings for our own citizens and probably will do so at higher wages. It's another undeniable cost of unfettered immigration, lower wages, and worse job prospects for many of our constituents. The Fairness Act would help because it would provide new authority for my office to take enforcement action against many businesses or any businesses that knowingly employ illegal aliens. And it would empower the governor to take away any state grants that a business would otherwise be entitled to, but for the fact that they employ illegal aliens. Now, this is critical to protect our workers and end the magnet that draws illegal immigration to our factories and communities. It's pro-business, it's pro-worker, and it's pro-Hoosier legislation. And then third and lastly, we must address the serious social and cultural costs of unchecked illegal immigration, even if it's not politically correct to do so. Any sovereign nation, in order to be so, requires shared values, common language, and a unified culture as its bedrock. The great American melting pot has long been celebrated for its ability to assimilate immigrants into a shared national identity that strengthens us all. But when immigration is uncontrolled, the melting pot breaks down. Last year, I was approached by a teacher. She had tears in her eyes. She said she was retiring, and I asked her why, because she objectively looked way too young to be retiring. And she said she couldn't take it anymore. She said she spends an hour in every hour dialing a 1-800 number for translation services for the multiple students she has in her class that weren't there the week before, that weren't there the day before, that have no understanding of the English language. They don't know why they're there, except their parents came illegally. That's unfair. It's unfair to the students and the taxpayers who are supposed to be in those schools. I'm not saying it's the kids' fault, but it is very disruptive, and it raises the cost of providing our public services. It raises our property taxes. It's unfair to the students who aren't getting the education they need and to the taxpayers funding the schools. By making clear that Indiana is not open to illegal immigration and by taking proactive steps to combat illegal immigration, the Fairness Act would discourage people who don't share our values, who don't share our language, culture, or even respect our laws from coming to our state. You'd be putting Hoosiers first by supporting the Fairness Act. The challenges of illegal immigration, crime on our streets, economic strain, and erosion of our shared culture strike at the heart of our Hoosier communities. These aren't just statistics, they're stories of real people, real families. One such Hoosier, Kendra Kastner, is with us today. Kendra, an angel sister, will share the devastating personal toll this crisis has taken on her family, a story far more powerful than I could ever convey. Kendra, thank you for your courage and being here to tell your story. Your heartbreaking experience and the struggles of countless others across Indiana serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of this crisis. These stories demand action, decisive, unified action by all three branches of our state government to protect our communities and secure the future for all Hoosiers. Indiana was the first non-border state to sue the Biden administration over its reckless border policies. Thank you. Alongside other conservative attorneys general, we served as the last line of defense against a deliberate attempt by the Biden administration to open our southern border and create chaos. Then, you all in the General Assembly strengthened the anti-sanctuary city law, which empowered my office to eliminate sanctuary jurisdictions in places like West Lafayette, East Chicago, Gary, and we are continuing to work to eliminate them. Make no mistake, when you give my office authority, we implement your intent. But now, more is needed. With Governor Braun in office and President Trump back in the Oval, we can do a lot more. As I said earlier, House Bill 1531 from last session easily passed this chamber, 64-26, but was stalled in the Senate Judiciary Committee by Senator Liz Brown, who refused to even give it a hearing. That decision set us back at least a full year. We can't afford further delays. Kendra and her family don't deserve further delays. Hoosiers elected us to put them first, demanding secure borders, safe communities, and fair job opportunities. The Fairness Act delivers on these fronts. It strengthens the anti-sanctuary city law by giving my office more tools to combat this. And don't forget, we have 2 lawsuits going right now, against the St. Joseph County Sheriff and the Monroe County Sheriff for alleged violations. We need to do more. We have to hold employers accountable who hire illegal aliens over Hoosier workers, and the Fairness Act does that. And the Fairness Act would require law enforcement to honor ICE detainers, not just notify ICE and then let them go out the back door. Notify ICE and hold them for a reasonable amount of time so that ICE can get there and remove these people from our country and state. And it requires our state agencies to start collecting data on who they're giving welfare to in terms of illegal aliens. No state agencies capture that data as I speak with you here today. And it's time we get a handle on understanding how much of our tax dollars are going to people who don't belong here. Now that's a lot of common sense in one little bill. And with your support, we can get it across the finish line this time. So let's put Hoosiers first together by supporting the Fairness Act. It's my honor to introduce you to our next speaker. You all know him quite well. He's a conservative outsider who I really appreciate, who's built a successful business as a Main Street entrepreneur, creating thousands of good-paying Hoosier jobs. He's lived the American dream. He's committed to preserving freedom and opportunity for future generations as Indiana's governor. On immigration, he has advocated for secure borders and a merit-based system, we were just talking about that, emphasizing policies that prioritize American workers and Hoosier communities. He believes in upholding the rule of law and aligns with the values of opportunity and prosperity that define the American dream. And he is proof positive that even if you were previously an opponent of his, you can still be great partners and friends. I give you Indiana's governor, Mr. Mike Braun.
I think the last time I was here was in January during inauguration, so we had a nice get-together then. Thank you, Attorney General Rokita and J.D. Prescott for reintroducing the legislation. Let me tell you why it's so important. I was there for 6 years in another job. 2 years under the Trump administration, 4 years under the Biden administration. And just so you know, the legislative template was the same under Trump and Biden. And during those 2 years, between 19 and 20, record low crossings, which is an issue in terms of don't come into our country illegally, respect it, respect its borders, and do what others have done mostly. Sad thing is, there was an open declaration that we're going to use every method possible to skirt the law. I'll never forget, it was probably in early 21, 16, 17 senators went down to the border, the Del Rio area. Never forget it. We get on a state police boat, go up the river. By the time we had come back, someone had just attempted crossing the Rio Grande. Whatever the reason, didn't make it. Was there in the river. The state police had spotted it. It told me how desperate some might be in coming here, but when you're enticed to do it with a crass calculation that might help you politically in the long run, and you have the cartels being your travel agents along the way, what a terrible, terrible dynamic. We will not fix it in the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, because the fact it would take 60 senators to agree to it. We hardly agree on anything on significant legislation there. So that's why it's so important that states in our capacities do what we can to make sure we make a difference. And by the way, in the short period of time since Trump has been back in office, we're down to record low closings again, based upon the same legislative template. I think that's worth a round of applause for the Trump administration. One of my first acts as governor was to make it clear that we would not be a safe haven for illegal immigration. We will fully partner with the federal government, immigration authorities, to enforce the fundamental laws of our country. The open border policies of the last 4 years turned every state into a border state. Hoosiers have suffered from the drugs and crime that come when federal border laws are not enforced, as do all the other states. Millions have entered our country illegally, and the American people voted overwhelmingly that they do not want that to be something that goes on into the future. Indiana is taking the lead. We've entered key partnerships with federal authorities. Our Department of Homeland is empowered to perform immigration enforcement functions such as arrests, issuing detainers, and taking and maintaining custody. Our Department of Correction has made 1,000 beds at Miami Correctional Facility available for deporting aliens who have committed crimes after entering the country illegally. We are doing our share as well. And our Indiana State Police are empowered to assist ICE in enforcing federal law and protecting Hoosier communities. I believe states need to lead the way in assisting federal authorities with enforcing our nation's most fundamental laws, but we need to take the next step to protect Hoosier communities. Attorney General Rokita talked about it. Representative Prescott's got the solution. It's the Fairness Act. This bill will provide even more tools to enforcing immigration law. It will create state penalties for employers who hire illegal aliens. It will strengthen state and local compliance with federal immigration enforcement, including cooperation with ICE detainers, and give the Attorney General the tools to ensure nowhere in Indiana is a sanctuary for illegal immigration. I want to thank again the Attorney General, Representative Prescott. Let's get it over the finish line this time. Hoosiers deserve it. The country deserves it. Enterprising states like ours will actually set the trend for what you can count on the federal government not doing. Thank you so much. Let's stay strong. Let's get it done.
We are deeply grateful to have Kendra Kastner with us today. She is a resilient Hoosier who has faced personal tragedy with remarkable strength. As an angel sister, she carries a poignant story that underscores the importance of stronger immigration policies for safer communities and justice for Hoosier families. Today she will share her moving experience with us, highlighting the need for change. This is why it's real. So please join me in welcoming Kendra Kastner.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you. Good afternoon. Is it on? Okay.
Test it. Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you, Attorney General Todd Rokita and his office for inviting me to speak today. My name is Kendra Kastner. I'm not just here as a sister, but as someone who has lost a beloved family member, my brother Brad, in a tragedy that never should have happened. Brad was killed by an individual who was driving without a license, someone who had already broken our laws multiple times and was still on the road. Today I want to share Brad's story, not just to honor his life, but to show you why change is urgently needed. His story is why I'm pushing for the Fairness Act in the upcoming Indiana General Assembly session. We cannot let this happen to another family. Before I talk about the law, I want you to know who Brad was. He was kind, adventurous, incredibly smart. He loved being outdoors, riding four-wheelers and hunting. He worked as a laborer for Dave O'Meara Construction, the same company where our dad works. His coworkers described him as one of the most hardworking people, always willing to lend a hand, even to crews outside of his own. He loved his job. It gave him the means to pursue his passion, ATV racing. He began racing in 2020 and quickly made a name for himself. He was talented, fearless, and dedicated. Over the years, he won multiple championships, and he was preparing for his biggest season yet in 2024. Brad had built a life he loved. He had goals and dreams he was chasing. He was only 27 years old, and all of it was taken from him in an instant by someone who never should have been behind the wheel. On March 26th, Brad left his home in Holton, Indiana, to drive to work in Seymour. Just minutes from his destination, another vehicle crossed the center line and struck him head-on. Brad was airlifted to Indiana Methodist Hospital, where doctors told us he suffered an unsurvivable head injury. He passed away the next day. While we were still in shock, we learned more about the driver who hit Brad, someone who should have never been on the road. This person never held a valid driver's license and was in the country illegally. He had been caught twice before driving without a license. In one of these incidents, he even crashed into a parked car. Shockingly, both of these earlier charges were filed under different versions of his name, the first and last names reversed, which resulted in him receiving pretrial diversions in both cases. That means he was essentially given a second chance despite being a repeat offender. In fact, at the time he killed Brad, he was still within the 6-month diversion period from his second offense. The prosecutor eventually revoked his diversion and added yet another charge of driving without a license, but we couldn't understand why he wasn't also being charged in Brad's death. The answer was devastating. There was a gap in Indiana law. There was no specific statute addressing what happens when someone without a license causes a fatal crash. As a result, the maximum penalty he faced was just 60 days in jail, with only 30 actually served for taking a life. That's when we knew we had to act. We had to make sure no one else would be allowed to evade accountability. I reached out to our state representative, Alex Zimmerman, and I will be forever grateful for the compassion and determination he showed us. He agreed that this was unacceptable and helped lead the charge to fix it. With his help and with the support of many other representatives and senators, we passed House Bill 1114 during the last session of the Indiana General Assembly. The bill enhances the penalties for driving without a license resulting in death, making a level 5 felony. The passing of this bill meant everything to our family. We can't undo what happened, but we can take comfort in knowing that now there will be accountability under Indiana law. On January 29th, 2025, President Trump signed the Lake and Riley Act into law. This legislation requires the federal detention of illegal immigrants who are accused of committing crimes that result in death or serious bodily injury. For our family, the passage of this law brought a measure of justice. It was because of the Lake and Riley Act that the person responsible for Brad's death was finally detained and deported. This law closed a gap that had previously allowed dangerous individuals to remain in the country despite serious offenses. But there is more work to do. Brad's story doesn't just show a gap in the law about driving without a license. It reveals a deeper issue about public safety and immigration enforcement in Indiana. The Fairness Act addresses these risks directly. It gives Indiana lawmakers the power to combat the consequences of illegal immigration at the state level, especially when federal enforcement falls short. By passing the Fairness Act, we can disincentivize those who enter illegally from finding sanctuary and employment here, ensure they don't exploit gaps in the system, and protect our communities before more lives are lost. We can't bring Brad back, but we can make sure what happened to him doesn't happen to somebody else. Brad should still be here today. His death was preventable, and that's what hurts the most. Thanks to House Bill 1114, we've made progress, but we are not done. The Fairness Act is the next step to ensure our laws protect every Hoosier from the risk created by those who break our laws and slip through the cracks. We owe it to Brad and to every family to make sure our laws have real consequences and real protections. Let's make sure what happened to Brad never happens again. The time to act on this is now. Thank you.
Kendra, thank you so much for your leadership. Speaking next is the former Acting Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and current Executive Vice President, Chief Strategy Officer, and Chair of Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Policy Institute. His name is Chad Wolf. And the America First Policy Institute, of course, is the policy arm of President Donald Trump. Chad is a proven leader with over a decade in government and private sector positions. During his time in service, he has advanced border security, counterterrorism, protected critical infrastructure, and addressed the Southwest border humanitarian crisis, earning the DHS Distinguished Service Medal. Today at AFPI, Chad shapes policy on immigration and national security, including opposition to open border policies. And of course, it was AFPI that last year supported 1531. His strategic vision is vital to restoring fairness for American families. Chad, thank you very much for being here today. We appreciate you. Please, if we can have your remarks.
All right, well, good afternoon. Let me thank the Attorney General Rokita, Governor Braun, for having me and inviting me here today to give a few opening comments. And I want to thank everyone here in this room for everything that you've done to make great headway as we continue to tackle the devastating consequences from 4 years of President Biden's open borders. Kendra, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing your story. I know it's difficult. Your comments continue to be a reminder, a stark reminder in many sense of why we're here today and what we're fighting for. You know, it's difficult to share your story. I've heard, unfortunately, many like it, but your willingness to do that, I think, inspires us. It inspires all of us, whether in my position or these individuals here that actually can make policy, can make law. So thank you for sharing your story about your brother. Today I'd like to speak about immigration enforcement, both at the federal and at the state level, kind of where we've been, where we're going, or where we are, and then where we're going. So it's been said many times, and all of you have probably heard it under the Biden-Harris administration, every state, including Indiana, became a border state. And I don't say that because a border state's a bad thing. It's just everything that comes across that border illegally or illicitly does not stay in Texas, Arizona, or California. It comes into every other state of the union. And in my view, a fight for a sovereign nation, one with borders, is a fight worth having. Under President Biden, and Attorney General Rokita mentioned this, I would say that we had a minimum of about 12 million individuals come across that border. My guess is it was higher. It's hard to count all of those folks that came across. 12 million is roughly the population of North Carolina, of Georgia, of Ohio. It's double the population here in Indiana. And so I think that it's worth reflecting on that. Again, those are just the individuals that we know about. The individuals that we don't know about are called gotaways, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later as well. So effectively, both President Biden and Vice President Harris allowed a 51st state of our union. And that's what we're dealing with now. A 51st state composed of cartel and gang members, CCP or Communist China Party members, Iranian terrorists, and other illegal aliens. That's not hyperbole. That's demonstrable facts. All of those individuals have come into the United States during the 4 years of the Biden regime. Like the rest of the nation, Indiana has felt these consequences of open borders. And as we all know too well, the Biden administration sent clear policy signals to the entire world to come on into the United States. Disregard our law, disregard the safety of our citizens and our national security. And they did this without vetting these individuals, disguising most of them as illegal immigrants, asylum seekers or parolees, and providing a litany of incentives to entice them to come. And I would say, lastly, lied to the American people repeatedly about the scale of the crisis that we eventually faced. So for 4 years, the United States rewarded criminals with hotels, with food, with health care, all funded by the American taxpayer, including those here in Indiana. The result was disastrous, as we all know. Now, under President Trump's leadership, we're beginning to uncover the true historic damage that those policies really endured. And look, we're 10 months into the Trump administration's second term, and only now are we starting to reverse that and starting to understand what are the consequences to 4 years. Among the new arrivals to our country, again, were violent criminals, transnational gang members affiliated with MS-13 and Tren de Aragua, nearly 400 known or suspected terrorists, and others. Cartels controlled the borders. Smugglers smuggled dangerous criminals, bypassing Border Patrol agents who were overwhelmed, and 1.6 million known gotaways over the span of 3.5 years, more than the amount of known gotaways for the previous decade. So for the previous 10 years, they eclipsed in 3.5. I tell you all this to give you some scale of the problem that the Trump team in its second term is having to endure here. To ensure the security and sovereignty of the American people, we must know who is entering our country, but most importantly, why they are entering our country. The surge of illegal aliens released into our communities continue to pose a national security threat and threatens the safety of every American. In the midst of mass illegal migration crisis, another crisis unfolded, right? Millions of pounds of synthetic drugs, specifically fentanyl, made their way into every community across the country, leaving destruction, leaving death in its wake. Other synthetic drugs that are actually more potent than fentanyl are beginning to merge into our country as well. It's tough, right? These are, as a father of 2 young children who go out, I have to talk to them about the crisis that we face with fentanyl, not knowing what you're putting into your body and having really deadly consequences. But make no mistake, Biden's policies enrich the cartels. Unfortunately, we are now beginning to see the cartels adapt to this new Trump enforcement policies. They're now finding new revenue streams, employing new methods to get illicit drugs and individuals into the country. And at all levels of government, we must continue to stay ahead of those threats. So it's critically important what you can do here in the state. Unfortunately, we're living in a time where nearly everyone in this room, like Kendra, can share a personal story or a community member affected by the border crisis. Here in Indiana, these devastating effects have been stark. In 2022 alone, nearly 2,000 Hoosiers lost their lives to fentanyl. And under the Biden administration, nearly 300,000 American lives were taken from us by those synthetic drugs like fentanyl, which should never have entered the country. We talk a lot about this is a crisis by design. It's by design because of the policies that were put in place. Developed in Chinese labs and smuggled into the U.S. by cartels, the goal of fentanyl is to poison the American people. And so this is warfare, and the Trump administration is right to call it that in taking the actions that they are. By simply enforcing our laws and imposing well-deserved consequences, the border today is the most secure it has been in many of our lifetimes. Encounters by Border Patrol have hit record lows, which we talked about, creating new 94% decrease since the same time last year, or same time in 24. There's been a 55% decrease in fentanyl coming across the border as well. The measures that President Trump and his team are putting in place are working. But again, I caution everyone, it's just been 10 months. There is more to do. When Border Patrol agents are allowed to do their job, the number of drugs smuggled into our country drop, and they drop quickly. Deterrence works, enforcement works, consequences work. Cartels know and believe that if they're going to be caught, they'll attempt to smuggle. If they're not going to be caught, they'll attempt to smuggle anything across that border. When there are consequences, we start to see their behavior change. So in addition to securing the border, in addition to curbing the illicit flow of criminals and fentanyl into the country, interior enforcement has also become prevalent today. What am I talking about? I'm talking about deportations or removals from the country. With over 15, as I said, 12 to 15 million individuals into our country over just the last 4 years alone, the Trump team's got a very tall task in front of them, is removing individuals that are here in the United States, here in communities in Indiana, that have no legal right to be here, and in many cases have exhausted all of their appeals through immigration court, through immigration judges, through the Immigration Court of Appeals, and they've all said you don't have a legal right to be here, but yet refuse to leave. It's now ICE's job to effectuate those orders and to remove individuals from the country. Partnership and support from states is crucial to the success of the Trump team going forward, particularly as we talk about our mass deportation effort. Here in Indiana, you've taken great strides to support ICE officers, as the governor and the Attorney General has said, strengthen their presence and enhance their operations. That's very different than what you see in a place like Chicago, where the mayor has issued an executive order calling ICE a credible threat to folks in his city. It's just incredible. Across the state here, 14 287G agreements have been entered into effect, encompassing all different versions of that agreement. Through partnerships like this, you've aided ICE in its ability to remove criminal, illegal aliens from your communities. Thanks to funding from the One Big Beautiful Bill, ICE is fully reimbursing those that participate in the 287G program, annual salaries, benefits, and overtime up to 25%. If that's not incentive enough, ICE is offering monetary performance awards based on the metrics and success laid out by DHS for participation in that program. So not only did that reconciliation bill provide funding, but it also provides detention space to hold these individuals before deportation. We were talking with the governor before we came out here, and he asked, what's the big difference in my view that the Biden team was doing versus what the Trump team is doing? And I said, well, there's a lot. But the big one is, if you were a criminal or you were an illegal alien coming across that southern border, you were immediately released into the country. And so that's an incentive to continue to come, right? To tell your family members to continue to come. That's why we had millions and millions and millions. What the Trump team is doing today is those individuals that are coming across the border, they're held in detention so that they can have their immigration court proceeding or be put into expedited removal and deported back. Consequences do work. And it's not because the laws changed, as the Attorney General said. Laws haven't changed between President Biden and President Trump. The mindset has, though, and it does work. As leaders of Indiana, you've taken strong steps in direction of cooperation and enforcement. So not only can you encourage statewide partnerships with ICE, but you can also take legislative action to do so as well. The Department of Justice has designated 13 states, 4 counties, and 18 cities as sanctuary jurisdictions. Indiana, on the other hand, has rejected these ridiculous policies and has taken a stand. You've passed legislation allowing your Attorney General to sue municipalities for these sanctuary violations, and introduced legislation to hold employers accountable for hiring illegal aliens, and you should be commended for doing so. Legislation like this puts American workers and their safety first, which is exactly why my team at the America First Policy Institute supported this legislation when it was introduced. These policies and enhancements lead to tremendous enhancements of immigration operations and great steps to reach the goal of securing our nation. But just like securing the border, there's always more to do. And so at America First Policy, we provided numerous resources for states to really have at their fingertips in navigating the way forward. We dove into the 287G program and detailed versions of the agreement that may work for some sheriffs, other parts of the agreement that may work for other sheriffs. We'll soon be publishing a removal roadmap to be used as a resource, a playbook for states like Indiana to recognize options that they have using state authority to help the Trump administration. So you're not alone in the fight. We are here, we're able to do a lot of things, and we're here to help you. As political leaders here in the state, you play a critical role in immigration enforcement. The work you've already done is remarkable, but again, as I said, there's always room to do more. So I encourage you to take every tool in your toolkit to enhance public safety, strengthen and expand the relationships and the cooperation with ICE every chance that you can. Sign more 287G agreements and partnerships. Pass more legislation countering the efforts of sanctuary policies, and become a role model, as you have been, for the rest of the country. In my view, we're not just in the midst of a political debate on issues like border security and immigration enforcement. I think we're in a battle for the future of Western civilization. The fight runs through American states. That fight runs through American states, small and large, Republican and Democrat. And in my view, the more America leads on this issue, the more the world will take notice and follow our example. And that fight starts right here in Indiana. So make no mistake, what you do here matters. The battle for American sovereignty, we must win, and we must win it decisively. Thank you again for having me here today. I think we're going to take some Q&A that we've had delivered.
See if this works. That works? Yeah. Okay, we have one. It says, what legal options are there or could be created to prosecute people and organizations who actively impede enforcing U.S. immigration laws, such as public schools or nonprofits who openly are harboring fugitives from the law?
Yeah, so good question. It's a tough question. Usually I get this question as it relates to non-governmental organizations or NGOs, which is we see NGOs operating sort of coaching individual illegal aliens to come into the United States, say a certain phrase or a certain set of words, and allow them to be released into the United States. Obviously, as I indicated, that stopped under President Trump. The difficulty here is a lot of these groups operate south of the border, outside of the U.S., and so the reach of the Justice Department's a little bit tougher. If it's school districts, which I think was mentioned here, I think that's different. I think you've got to, I think the key here that we see a lot is trying to understand what it is that they're doing and how it is breaking the law. I think it's really important as the Trump team, and they've been very successful, as they introduce new policies in place, or as they bring enforcement actions against different groups or different individuals, that they're doing that with the law on their side. Now, that's not to say that it's all clear cut, because what they're doing are things that haven't been done before. And so a lot of that is getting litigated all the way to the Supreme Court and elsewhere. So just because someone tells you, well, we've never done it that way before, well, we've never gone after this person or this group of individuals, that's not to say it's wrong. It's not to say it can't be done. It's just no one's had the wherewithal or the fight or the fortitude to do it before. And so I think that's a certainly an accomplishment of the Trump team. It's something they should be proud of. But to get to your question, I think you got to ascertain exactly what the individual or group of individuals are doing to break the law, and then have leadership, either in the state or at the federal level, be willing to prosecute.
Okay, great. Next question. They're asking, is there a way to investigate schools that have a certain percentage of ELL students to determine citizenship? So maybe just a broader question about, can states demand data from schools about the number of citizens versus non-citizens that are enrolled?
Well, again, tricky question. What states can do is you can come at this a couple of different ways. You could probably pass a law that allows them to do that. There's also a way in which states can look at voter rolls to see who is legal and who is not. It's a different way to come about the same issue, but I think I understand the question, which is how many of those are enrolled in public school that are here illegally or not. I think that's going to vary from state to state. There's nothing at the federal level that I'm aware of that allows something like that. We're not keeping track per se of children, and that's why, during the Biden administration, you had over 500,000 children come across that border unaccompanied. And so for those of you, that, again, I don't know a right football analogy here in Indiana, but my son's a freshman at Penn State, and that stadium holds 100,000. And so, under 4 years of the Biden administration, you filled up that stadium 5 times with the number of children that came here in the United States. And so they're in every community today. Very few of those children have gone back home. And then that cycle continues and continues and continues. So it's a good question. It's probably going to be at the state level to determine who's in public school systems that are here illegally or not, what kind of status that they have. Again, you can be here illegally, and you can still have some type of status that allows you to remain in the United States. Although I would say the vast majority do not have status as well. So, difficult question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You touched on this earlier, but what do you know about the funding structures for illegal immigration or migration? How tied to it is with international terrorist cartels, and then what about with the Democrat Party?
Yeah. So I'll just back up a little bit. So what you see coming across, and I'll just talk primarily about the southern border, although it applies to our northern border as well, mostly southern. Any individual that comes across that border is paying a cartel member or a group or an organization to come across that border. So anywhere between $5,000 and $35,000, depending on where you're coming from in the world. If you're coming from Mexico or Central America, you're probably paying a little bit different if you're a Chinese national or you're some other nationality. So all of those individuals are paying cartels. So during the 4 years of the Biden administration, you had the cartels having more power, more money, more weapons than they've ever had before, just because their funding source was through the roof. And that's why it's really, really important that, and the only reason that people are going to pay their life savings or they're going to pay a cartel member that's going to do ungodly things to them on their journey is for the right to stay in the United States. And so if you impose consequences on that and you say, look, if you want to come here, you got to come legally. But if you come and you choose to do it illegally, you're going to be sent back home. That's why the number of encounters have dropped 96% during the Trump administration, because they're holding them accountable. They're not releasing them. And so the most humane immigration policy is to be upfront with these individuals and say, if you want to come into the United States because you want a better job, you want a better life for your family, and God bless all of you, you got to come legally. Don't do it illegally, because there are consequences to that. And so, the funding stream from that, it depends. If you're an individual just trying to get in, you're probably funding that yourselves versus another group or an organization. I mentioned it in my remarks. We had 400 known or suspected terrorists, almost 400 picked up during the 4 years of the Biden administration along that border. A lot of that is still being investigated on how they came, who paid for them, and for what purpose. So a lot of people like to paint what goes on at the southern border as it's all families and it's just good people trying to come here to do a better life. For those of you that have spent time on the border, it's a different picture.
Well, I think we're trying to keep on time here, so I guess we'll just do one more, and that is, what can the general public do to assist law enforcement or state and local officials with curbing illegal immigration?
Well, that's a tough one. I would say just continue to be supportive of ICE. You know, ICE has a tough job. I would say immigration enforcement's a tough job. Why is that? Some would say, well, it shouldn't be a tough job. Congress passes the law, and then ICE is simply enforcing the law. Many of your sheriffs are here today, right? Law's passed, you're enforcing the law. It really shouldn't be that difficult, but there's a lot of emotion when it comes to immigration of who stays in the country, who leaves the country, and in what manner. And those ICE officers that do that job, just like many of the sheriffs here, they put on that badge and that gun, and they leave their house, and they don't know if they're coming home to their loved ones that night. And for them to be vilified, to be targeted, just because you don't like the policies that evidently Congress passed, you don't like that last 30 years. Immigration policies law hasn't changed. You're just enforcing the law. So I would say if you're just, general public, support law enforcement. Whether it's ICE, whether it's your local, whether it's your sheriff, or whatever it might be. These men and women are doing very, very difficult jobs. So we should continue to give them all the support, all the tools, and the resources that we can for them to do their job. And I'll end on this. As I would talk to a variety of groups when I was in federal service, and it's been some number of years now where I was reading daily intelligence of threats to the homeland. And all I could tell people is there's really bad people out there that come into the United States every single day and that want to kill Americans every single day. And it's because we have a great national security footprint, we've got great intelligence, but our last line of defense are our great men and women of law enforcement that do their job every day, and so we should continue to support them.
Great. And one other thing the general public can do is to call their state representatives and state senators and ask them to support the Fairness Act.
Right.
So we can end on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Now we're going to have a quick panel, and I'll have my Assistant Chief Deputy Blake Lanning come and moderate the panel, and he'll introduce the panelists. Blake, why don't you come up? And you're probably aware of it by now, but we're on time. You had a good lunch. We're learning some things, so you probably understand by now that this had nothing to do with me. It did have everything to do with Blake Lanning and my Legislative Policy Director, Aaron Tuttle. So please give them a round of applause. I appreciate it. And Blake, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. As the Attorney General said, we're going to bring up a few experts on the immigration issue to take some questions that I'll be moderating and discuss a few different features of the immigration issue generally and also the Fairness Act more specifically. And you'll have to excuse us. We weren't originally planning on doing this event in the House chamber, so the panel is going to look a little unusual. It'll look more like a debate than a panel, but we'll have people at the floor mics and on the clerk's desk. So I'll just introduce the panelists if you come up as I introduce you. First, we have Dale Wilcox. Dale is the Executive Director and General Counsel of the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He has you can go to the one on the left there, Dale. Dale has a lot of deep experience on a variety of immigration issues, including litigating cutting-edge immigration legal questions in court, including cases in Indiana, which we'll speak about in a moment. Also with us from the Federation for American Immigration Reform is Sherry Rendell. She may be a familiar face for some legislators in the room. She's the State and Local Engagement Director with FAIR. Again, just a really deep reservoir of experience, over 15 years working on the immigration topic. And lastly, we have Tony Pham, who is a senior fellow in Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Policy Institute, works with Mr. Wolf there. Tony has an impressive background, held a variety of posts at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in the first Trump administration, including as Assistant Secretary for Border Security and Immigration, the Acting Director for Immigration Customs Enforcement, ICE. He was Acting ICE Director, and is Principal Legal Advisor to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So thank you, all three of you, for being here. And we'll get started. The first question I'll pose to all three of our panelists, if you could just speak briefly to it. I wanted to start with the title of this event, The Need for State Action on Immigration. I think when President Biden was in office, the need for states to be active in this space was pretty obvious. As the Attorney General mentioned, Indiana was the first state, non-border state, to sue the Biden administration. States were playing a lot of defense, pushing back on bad policies at the federal level. It's, of course, very different now. As Mr. Wolf noted, President Trump's policies have brought border crossings to record lows. You have a totally different orientation at the federal level. And so to each of the panelists, and we'll start with Dale and Sherry and then Tony, if you could just speak a little bit to kind of, what's the rationale now? What are the good reasons now for states to be active in the immigration space as compared to maybe kind of the motivations and reasons to be active when we had President Biden in the White House? It's on now.
Okay, hello. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for having me here. We might have gotten operational control of the border, but that doesn't mean that those folks who were let in under Biden have left. They're still here. So we need interior enforcement. Every state, as Mr. Wolf stated, is a border state now. This will affect you. And you will notice if you crack down on illegal immigration, you're going to see crime drop. It's a national security issue. We have folks in here, Mr. Homan, who I've had the pleasure of traveling with for the last 5 years around the country, will note to you that there are multiple national security threats inside the country still. And ICE cannot be everywhere. You are a force multiplier. ICE critically needs your help to locate these individuals. On a national security level, at least 3 of the 9/11 hijackers were illegal aliens. Multiple of those individuals came in contact with state and local police departments. If they would have been cooperating with the federal government at that time, we might have had a different outcome on 9/11. So it's very important. This issue has not been resolved. We might not be releasing new folks into the country, but we have plenty of people that are here who are unknown. As Secretary Wolf mentioned, there were many who came in under Biden, at least 1.7 million, if not more, who are unknown to us, who were not apprehended in any way, and they're still here. So your help is critical.
Thanks, Dale. Sherry?
So states bear the brunt of the cost of illegal immigration. Therefore, they have an incentive to turn off the spigot of illegal immigration. According to FAIR's 2023 cost study, which was based on 15.5 million illegal aliens in the United States, there were 154,000 illegal aliens in Indiana, plus their 53,000 U.S.-born children. It costs Hoosiers $921.3 million annually. It's also crucial to remember some of the lessons we learned from the Trump administration on why we need to act. Where Biden came into office and he immediately rescinded all of Trump's policies and opened up our borders. We all know about Trump's big, beautiful bill, and while that is important to provide funding for ICE and the border wall and many other things, it didn't include changes to immigration policy, reforms that are really needed to address many of the influxes of illegal aliens. Also, since 60 votes are required in the U.S. Senate, it's going to be very difficult for Congress to make the changes that are needed to our immigration policy. Therefore, it's incumbent on all of you to really work on the state level to enact legislation that strengthens immigration enforcement. And we have to remember in 2024, voters voted for immigration enforcement. That's not just on the federal level, that's here at the state level too. And for those reasons, it's really important that legislators don't take their foot off the gas. We need you all to enact the Fairness Act.
Thanks, Sherry. Tony?
Great. Just briefly, I'll just say one thing on why states should act. Ms. Kasner. Absolutely powerful story, powerful message. It broke my heart every single time when I stood before the podium giving a press statement that I had to read out the names. I didn't have to. I wanted to read out the names of the victims of our angel families so America would always remember the real face and the real cost of what happens when the federal government doesn't enforce the laws, when local government doesn't enforce the laws, and if we don't have states like you all fighting hard to enforce our immigration laws. That was preventable, and I always go around telling folks that, who would listen, of course, that we have the authority to actually, believe it or not, prevent tragic situations like what Ms. Kasner endured. So states should act, obviously passing legislation that provides an avenue for our local law enforcement, our constitutional officers. I'm looking at our sheriffs out there, love you all, but we need the force multipliers in our communities to get the fentanyl off the streets, to get the criminal aliens off the streets, and the state has to act to empower them to do so. That's the fundamental basics of why states should do it. Let me give you the ideology behind this, okay? I shared a very brief moment with Secretary Morales just earlier here, and I believe that every state in the union has lawful immigrants, folks who found their ways, as Secretary Wolf talked about, who came to this country, who became United States citizens. And I think, and I fully believe as a refugee myself, that when states stand with us at the federal system and they fight and they enforce immigration laws, you all ultimately show value to the lawful immigration pathways that so many people, such as my mother and my father and myself, and Secretary Morales, who came to this country, who engaged the process with the single vision of becoming an American. And we would love to have the support, even on the theoretically speaking, if that's your motivation, then so be it. So I wanted to present that different viewpoint from someone who's walked that journey and who has spent years listening to the previous administration and the members of the public conflate the topic of lawful immigration with illegal immigration. Lawful immigrant, right? Been an American, U.S. citizen since May of 1985, and I was proud to lead the enforcement arm under President Trump in the first administration as the acting director for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ensuring that I paid value and paid homage to those who came before me who engaged the process properly.
Thanks, Tony. Sherry, I'll throw the next question to you. So we talked a little bit about reasons for, states to continue to have a very, kind of active interest in the immigration issue, given the change of administrations. Wanted to ask you, what does the change in administration at the federal level mean for local law enforcement? We have a number of sheriffs in the audience, obviously, local police departments, who may have had a bad experience working with ICE or other federal officials under the Biden administration. Kind of what does the changed environment in D.C. mean for our local law enforcement here?
So you're absolutely right that when local law enforcement agencies called ICE under the Biden administration, a lot of times they would hold the individual and the individual would not be picked up, or there was not a priority that was ICE wanted to do and follow up with. And the Trump administration is obviously taking a very different approach. They want local law enforcement to partner with the federal government. We're seeing a lot more 287G programs and agreements under the Trump administration. In fact, there are, as Mr. Wolf mentioned, 14 active 287G agreements in Indiana. But even more, officers can hold individuals for up to 48 hours. That is a real bona fide help to federal immigration officials. One of the things that's important to note is that ICE has just 20,000 employees, and only half of those are dedicated to the apprehension and removal of illegal aliens. State and local law enforcement are force multipliers, as was mentioned. They're about 900,000 strong, and it's vital to ferreting out those who wish to cause harm in our communities. If ICE is forced to go into communities rather than areas like a jail, there is a potential for a lot more danger. If somebody has to go into the community, they're not secured. The people who they're approaching may have weapons. There could be risks to public safety. And for that reason, it's much better for the local law enforcement to detain individuals and to have that transfer made in the jails. And that's what the Fairness Act would require.
Thanks, Sherry. Tony, you have something on that?
Great, Sherry, thank you. And if I may, for the sheriffs here, just so you know, I served 8 years as in-house counsel for a local sheriff in Virginia, and I was actually a regional jail superintendent who held ICE detainees in my correctional facility. And I go back to what Sherry was talking about on the detainers. Well, let me go back. You have an enthused partner now in ICE that are absolutely 100% willing, because they're empowered by the White House to go do immigration enforcement, that I'm very confident that if you make that phone call now, those folks will probably send a caravan of folks to come pick up the individuals from your facility. But for the sheriffs, let me reiterate for the members of the public, what we're dealing with when we talk about the changes in the administration for your purposes, and we can talk a little bit more about it in the breakout session for sure, is we're dealing with individuals that have already been convicted of a crime, right? So they have already established a record for us that they have criminality in their record. And so the decision to make holding an individual pursuant to a request under a detainer for 48 hours really for me wasn't a hard one when I was advising my client, a sheriff, to be able to do so. And we can talk about the enhanced 287G model that I engaged in when I was a regional jail superintendent, which took the liability off the table for if you all were concerned about that. Being part of the jail enforcement model, we were able to hold legally illegal immigrants that were tendered over to us from ICE. So that's what you're getting right now with a new administration in the White House, a lot more enthusiasm and a lot more flexibility to be able to hold on to these criminal aliens.
Thanks, Tony. Dale, I'll throw the next question to you, and kind of building on what Sherry and Tony were talking about. Obviously the question of how local law enforcement treats detainer requests from ICE has been a question that the General Assembly in our state has been kind of working on or grappling with for a while now. The sanctuary statute that the Attorney General enforces first passed in 2011. The General Assembly has modified that, amended it over time as new challenges have arisen. I know, Dale, you were kind of there at the beginnings of that statute and have litigated cases under it. So curious to hear you speak a little bit about kind of the origins of Indiana's existing sanctuary law, and also kind of what the next steps are for that statute, how it could be strengthened or changed to continue building on past efforts in the General Assembly.
Sure. My organization actually provided the model legislation for your 2011 law, and we worked closely with you to get that passed. In 2017, I believe it was, my organization, along with the BOP law firm, and a little background about myself, I grew up in Indiana, graduated New Albany High School, and yeah. And my first job was with the BOP law firm, then BOP Colson and Bostrom. I contacted Jim Bopp and in about 2017 to go against Gary and East Chicago for their sanctuary welcoming ordinance. We sued them. The case went all the way to the Indiana Supreme Court. We won in the trial court. It was a mixed bag in the Court of Appeals. And then we get to the Indiana Supreme Court and they say, you don't have standing. Now, your law did say that any domiciliary of Indiana could bring a case. Anyway, it was interpreted differently. So you took things into hand and you amended that law and allowed your AG here to bring enforcement actions. And he has done so on a regular basis. Very, very happy to see that. And detainer requests, it's an issue that gets people riled up, but let me assure you, I've litigated these cases around the country. We helped Texas with their SB4. They are constitutional for sheriffs, police, law enforcement to cooperate with. The opposition will say that no, in order to comport with the Fourth Amendment, it has to be a crime. That's not true. If that were the case, then you could never pick up someone who's mentally ill off the streets. You have statutes that allow you to grab people. Juveniles who run away, you're able to grab them. You don't have to have a crime committed. Okay, the opposition has tried to sow that seed into people's minds. That's not true. Also, they try to say that you need a 287G agreement to cooperate with ICE regarding detainers. That is also not true. There is a provision in 287G that allows for detention. So the ICE detainer form itself states on it, we have probable cause to believe this person is removable from the United States. Under the constructive knowledge doctrine, you as law enforcement have the authority to cooperate with that. ICE's knowledge is imputed to you. The case law is clear. So complying with ICE detainers, it's a smart thing to do. It will keep dangerous criminals off your streets. I mean, when you think about what does the opposition, what are they asking of you? To release people with criminal histories back into the community to reoffend. So you can be assured it is legal. And it's a smart thing to do, and this legislation that you have before you makes those detainers mandatory. You need to do this for the safety and security of your communities.
Thanks, Tony. And I'll just note the kind of the postscript to the story that Dale was describing right there. Today, neither Gary nor East Chicago have sanctuary policies. And the reason why is because the General Assembly gave the Attorney General the authority to bring enforcement action since private litigants didn't have standing. And our office did that last year. Kind of shifting topics, and Tony, I'll start with you on this question. In his remarks, I'm sorry. I'm skipping around. In his remarks at the beginning, the AG mentioned a work site raid in Mississippi and kind of an ICE raid that resulted in a number of illegal aliens being deported and job opportunities opening up. And obviously one aspect of the Fairness Act that we've talked about here today is creating state-level penalties for illegal employment and also creating, giving the Attorney General the authority to enforce in illegal employment situations. As former acting ICE director, curious if you can just speak a little bit to, I guess the importance of ICE's work doing work site raids, enforcing the provisions of federal law that make it illegal to hire illegal aliens?
Absolutely, thank you. So I want to go back to what Secretary Wolf mentioned in data. We have about over 500,000 unaccompanied minor children come across the border in the previous administration, right? So I set the stage for you all to understand, technically speaking, when HSI through ICE decides to go out and they do a worksite enforcement raid, we're looking at enforcing, obviously, the legal employment pathway through the I-9 verification process, but invariably, we are going to find individuals who were smuggled over into the United States into forced labor opportunities into these type of environments. And invariably, we will find individuals who are unaccompanied minor children who are placed in those positions to be forced to work on pennies on the dollar. I can't tell you enough, another crazy part, my very first search warrant, I'm sorry to tell you anecdotal stories, gentlemen, folks, I don't want to take up your time, but my very first search warrant was down in Nashville, Tennessee, where we did a worksite enforcement on basically a series of Chinese food restaurants. On its face, doing an enforcement action on its face at the business was one particular visual, but the search warrants we did, we found a human smuggling ring at a residence in a very, very well-to-do suburban neighborhood, which, if I may surmise, would look like something that, I'm going to confess to you all, that I live in a well-to-do neighborhood, right? That I would not have thought that that would be the place. So it's critical for our partners to be in a position, our state partners, even our local partners, to be in a position to assist us, if you have the legislation here that you do, to be able to engage in penalizing employers for unilaterally, knowingly hiring illegal aliens who come to this country illegally. I won't get into the conversation about how they take away jobs from U.S. citizens. I'm looking at it from a public safety standpoint as well as the forced labor smuggling standpoint.
Thank you. And I guess kind of related to that same conversation, Sherry, if you could maybe speak to what I guess other states have done, what Indiana currently does, whether it be with E-Verify or otherwise, kind of what are the options for states to take action parallel with, in support of, federal prohibitions on illegal employment?
Sure. So right now there are about 23 states that have some sort of E-Verify, including Indiana, which requires it only for public officials. But there are only 9 states that actually mandate E-Verify for private employers. And the Fairness Act would penalize employers that employ illegal aliens by revoking business licenses and articles of incorporation. It also allows tools like allowing the AG the authority to seek civil penalties, and it allows the governor to withhold state grants for failing to follow the law. One of the important things is that jobs are a magnet for illegal immigration. It is probably one of the most important reasons people come to the country. And illegal aliens are willing to accept remuneration that is a lot less than what American workers would. So it will undercut wages here in America. Also, the presence of illegal alien workers suppresses wages overall. So that is important on why we need to really institute legislation like the Fairness Act. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is the cartels control the border, and they have a certain amount of costs that is associated with coming across the border. And if an individual can't pay that, they are going to be owing the cartels. And so by doing that, they now become essentially indentured servants. This is a modern day slavery issue. And how are they doing that? They're working here illegally. So by incentivizing illegal immigration and not implementing things like the Fairness Act, you are actually putting money into the hands of the cartel.
Thanks, Sherry. And I'll just note both Tony and Sherry have kind of mentioned the very important, I guess, labor trafficking aspect of illegal immigration. And it's I don't think it's something we've mentioned so far, anyone's mentioned so far, but that is also another provision. And Representative Prescott's bill is a provision that would strengthen the Attorney General's investigative and enforcement authority in the labor trafficking area. We have just a few minutes left with the panel, and so I'm just going to kind of go down the line again, start with Tony this time, and then Sherry, and then Dale. If you just kind of give us some final thoughts on, I guess, where we're at as a country, you know, on the illegal immigration issue, how officials and lawmakers at the state level should be thinking about this issue, kind of what should be top of mind when you know, members of the General Assembly in this room and their colleagues reconvene in January and they start thinking about, you know, what can the state be doing to help the Trump administration tackle the illegal immigration issue.
Sure, thank you, and I won't belabor the point because I know for interest of time, Secretary Wolf said we're in the fight for Western civilization. And so that coming from a guy who came here in 1975 as an immigrant, that hits home. That's hit home because this is my home. And what we're looking for when I was sitting in that seat in the federal system were willful partners who were going to join us in that fight. And the Fairness Act is, from what I reviewed, that's the first step, waging and stepping into the scrum with us hand in hand in ensuring that we protect the homeland, secure our borders, and ensure that we vet individuals who wish to come into this country and find those who have already come into this country who wish to do Americans harm. And so those are my closing remarks. I welcome the partnership. I welcome courageous folks who want to walk hand in hand with our ICE officers who are being targeted out there and showing them support that they desperately need and should hear from all of us as Americans.
Thanks, Tony.
So before I give you my final thoughts, I just want to recognize the Representative Prescott for introducing the Fairness Act, but also recognize Senator Cook, who was instrumental in passing the bill that that gave the authority to the AG's office to go after sanctuary jurisdictions. We've talked about the Biden border crisis and how it flung our borders wide open, but one of the things we haven't really mentioned is the illegal alien population. And according to Pew Research report in 2024, using 2022 population data, Illinois, a neighboring state, ranked 6th for the largest number of illegal alien in its state. You would expect California, Texas, Florida, New York to be high on that, as well as New Jersey. But Chicago is a major magnet for illegal immigration because of its policies. And we all know individuals who haven't been vetted are coming into Chicago. But the problem is you can't keep them in Illinois. They're going to come across the border. And we've already started seeing that, especially in the northwest area of Indiana, that has really had an influx of illegal alien and crime come into the state. And coupling with that is cartel influence. Indiana does have cartels. And according to a September 2024 DEA intelligence report regarding illegal drug threat in Indiana, there are two cartels that are significant. One is the Sinaloa cartel, and the second is the Jalisco New Generation cartel. And they talk about the fact that Indiana is prime because of its location, its transportation, the highways that go through it. And Indiana is the way that drugs are getting passed throughout the Midwest. So it is crucial for you all to act. And the Fairness Act is needed to really fortify Indiana's prohibition on sanctuary policies and making it more difficult for criminal aliens.
Thanks, Sherry. Dale?
Well, I guess my parting words are get a handle on this issue now. I love this state. I don't want to see it become what I've seen elsewhere in this country. You need to move now while you can. I live in Northern Virginia now and have for several years. And you don't want to become DC, and it makes it difficult to live there at times. And I am so appreciative that this bill has been introduced, that you consider this a serious issue to hold this event today, that you're giving it serious thought, and you care about your constituents, you care about their safety, you care about their future. You have partners in DC who are willing to work with you. Of course, all of these organizations that we represent today are here for you. Whatever you need, resources, we're here. But you have the federal government also. They are willing participants, and in fact are more than willing and would like your cooperation. And together we can make a difference. We can get a hold of this issue and stop the terrible effects that we've seen in other jurisdictions. So thank you for having me today.
Thanks, Dale. Thank you to everyone on the panel.
Thank you, Blake, and thank you, panelists. And Dale, you're welcome back to Indiana, sir. We have great law to practice here if you want to. The sun doesn't rise and set in Washington, or in Virginia for that matter. I want to thank the panelists. I think that you look at the quality of these individuals, and you look at a lion like Chad Wolf. That sounded a little odd. And you look at the credibility. They come here because of the credibility that you all have, that Indiana has for getting tasks completed. So I want to also thank Chad again. I didn't get to do that earlier, for being here today, sir. You did a great job, and I'm grateful for your partnership. And as we get ready to hear from Tom Homan, let me bring my friend J.D. Prescott up to walk through the bill just a little bit. He'll dive a little bit deeper into this act that we think we know must become a law, and he's been at the forefront of this issue. He represents, as some of you know, District 33, which spans Randolph, Blackford, parts of Jay, Delaware, and Henry counties. He embodies the values of faith and family that are commensurate with those counties and all of Indiana. He'll be authoring the Fairness Act. It'll start in the House, hopefully, and, well, obviously, and I'm ready to get to work with him. I hope you all are too. Please join me in welcoming your colleague, J.D. Prescott.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. And before I get started too deep into the bill, I also have to point out a couple of our other colleagues. Representative Bascom, he also carried House Bill 1393 last session, which really act in tandem. If you can give a wave, Representative Bascom. Which was really meant to act in tandem with this. That Representative Bascom's bill was really supposed to be more on the front end, on that notification of ICE of individuals believed to be illegal immigrants, and then our legislation that we're working on here today to carry over this next session was supposed to really work in on the back end and close that out. And also our Senate sponsor, Senator Cook, as well, has been a vital ally along with this as well. So thank you, Senator Cook. And of course, with the Attorney General's team has been key to getting this bill to where it's at in great shape. You know, I'm just a farm boy from rural Indiana, so to have the expertise and the legal staff of the minds of the Attorney General and Blake Lanning really helping guide give a legal analysis as we're working through this bill, that has been vital. So thank you very much for your assistance in the legislation. So just diving through, there's multiple sections of the bill, and I'm just kind of going to give a quick synopsis of each section of the legislation. So the first section requires the Attorney General to defend law enforcement officer, government body, or post-secondary education institution in a civil suit that's arisen out of the enforcement of an immigration detainer section of the bill. That's really been vital. As I've been talking to some of my local sheriffs, and some of which are here today, and I appreciate you being here today. Just that constant threat of a lawsuit that the sheriff's departments and local law enforcement officers are under when they are enforcing these laws. So making sure that we give our law enforcement agencies some cover. Also, second section of the bill just simply defines the immigration detainer request. The third section of the bill clarifies that the government bodies may not limit or restrict the enforcement of federal immigration laws, regardless of whether they are enforced by federal, state, or local law enforcement. This fourth section outlines the penalties for violating noncompliance with immigration detainer request, and then the fifth and sixth sections removes the mens rea standard from our anti-sanctuary city statute, so a court may enjoin a policy that's in violation of sanctuary city laws, regardless of whether the government body knowingly and intentionally violated the law. The next section, it requires the government body that has custody of an individual who is the subject of an immigration detainer request to notify the judge making a bail determination for the individual of the request. The government body must document the detainer request in the person's case file and comply with the federal request and inform the individual that they are being detained by the subject of an ICE detainer request. If the subject of an individual detainer request presented documentation that they are a U.S. citizen, the government body shall verify citizenship with the federal authorities. Government body or an employee of a government body is not criminally or civilly liable for the action taken in compliance with the immigration detainer request. And the next section requires that the judge shall record in the court records that the individual is subject of an immigration detainer request. Section 9 of the bill has to do with the parolee sponsorship language. We are actually looking at changing some of that in the next section, so I'm going to kind of skip that for right now. And then we move on to some increased reporting requirements from the Residential Care Assistance Program, Division of Family Resources, Family Assistance Services, TANF, Medicaid, and the County Welfare Administration, really to get a better number of those dollars that our taxpayers are spending on illegal immigrants in our state. When I read the stat and was going through the information for the legislation, $921 million is what it cost our state in 2023. I serve on Ways and Means, and looking at that number and how much illegal immigration is costing our state, that is alarming. And with the open border policy of the Biden administration, that has just going to make those numbers climb. Now, thankfully, with the leadership of President Trump and Mr. Homan, the borders are at an all-time low, and we are putting a cease to that. But we still have to do our part to make sure that we are enforcing the law here in our state. Next section has to do with employers makes it unlawful for an employer to knowingly and intentionally recruit, hire an unauthorized alien in Indiana. Defines that reasonable due diligence and creates a safe harbor for employees who comply with it. It outlines an escalating penalty scheme for violations of the section. Penalties start with a warning, then work its way from a suspension up to a revocation of business license. Section 12 allows the court to award the states the cost of the investigation court costs if the state successfully prosecuted in a case concerning human trafficking, labor trafficking, or prostitution. And then there's just some conforming language to clean up other sections of our statute as well. So that's kind of the guts of the bill. Obviously, you've heard from multiple speakers and industry experts here today that this is a necessary step that we must take due to the failure of the previous administration and that open border policy. We have to do our part as a state to assist President Trump and Mr. Homan, and we're very thankful for their leadership, and I know that I am willing to work alongside each and every one of the members of the General Assembly to get this bill in its final position, as well as the Attorney General and all others that are willing to assist make this bill become law. With that, I'll turn things over back to our Attorney General.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate your leadership as always. Our next speaker is the current White House Border Czar and former acting director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Service. He's a 34-year veteran of federal law enforcement who began his career as a New York police officer and Border Patrol agent, rising through the ranks under 3 presidents, Clinton, Bush, and Obama, before leading ICE under President Trump. He has overseen record deportations of criminal aliens and spearheaded the zero-tolerance policy to deter illegal crossings, saving lives and securing our borders. Now, as President Trump's border czar, he is at the forefront of mass deportation efforts. His no-nonsense approach, which I truly love, has made him a trusted voice on illegal immigration across the nation. We are grateful he came out of retirement to help President Trump, and we are grateful that he's spending the day with us here today and came especially for this purpose. Please welcome Border Czar Tom Homan.
All right. Thank you. Well, I've been a little busy lately. You're exactly right. Just so where did I come from? I started in Border Patrol in 1984. 1984, I entered on duty as a Border Patrol agent. I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan, up to President Trump. I was the first acting director of ICE that actually came up through the ranks. There were 20,000 men and women. I never asked them to do anything I didn't do myself, because I was one of them. That was my proudest achievement, running ICE as one of the ones who climbed those ranks 1 year at a time for 34 years. This is the second time I came out of retirement for President Trump. My first time, it's a story I tell many times, I actually thought Hillary Clinton would beat President Trump in the first election. The whole nation was pretty much convinced he didn't have a shot. And after 8 years under Obama, I decided it's time for me to leave. So I announced my retirement just before the election. And the night of the election, my wife asked me, after Trump was announced the winner, she goes, "Now what are you going to do?" And I says, "Oh, I already put my papers in, already accepted a job with a private company, making a lot more money than I did as an ICE director. No more death threats, no more moves. I'm going to continue doing it." And it was at my retirement party in January, I got a call from DHS Secretary and President Trump saying they wanted me to stay and run the agency. So I unretired that time. And I unretired this time because of 4 years I watched what was happening at the border, and every day I woke up upset because I knew in the last 24 hours how many children died making that journey. How many women got sexually assaulted by the cartels last night? How many no-inspected terrorists crossed the border? How many women and children were sexually, were part of sexual sex trafficking? How many pounds of fentanyl came in and killed Americans? So for 4 years, I was upset. So I was the first call President Trump made. I was actually out to dinner with my wife. And I had my phone sitting on the table, and the phone's going off, and it says POTUS. My wife looks at me, she goes, "Oh my God." And sure enough, I walked outside to the phone call. He asked me to come back. I didn't hesitate to come back. So I said, "Yeah, I'm coming back," which I did. Look, you can like or love President Trump. I can tell you right now, I've worked for this man. He's the greatest president in my lifetime as a border guy, an immigration guy, a law enforcement guy, a military guy. No one's done it better. Every president I worked for, every president, including Clinton and Obama, took some steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. We didn't know who's coming in, what's coming in, where's coming in, why it's coming in. But no one did it better than President Trump. Trump 45, his success was unprecedented. So I took that first phone call with President Trump. He asked me to do 3 things. 1, secure the border. 2, run the largest deportation operation this country's seen. 3, find over 300,000 missing children. That was my tasks assigned to me by the president. Where are we at today? Today we got the most secure border in the history of this nation. The data proves it. Most secure. We went from 10, 12,000 a day coming to our border to, I don't know, what was it, Friday? Less than 100. And every one of those were removed or detained. There has not been a single illegal alien released from the southern border since March of this year. And I will not take credit for, I've never taken credit for, I give the credit to men and women in the United States Border Patrol where I started my career. There are 20,000 men in here. I actually met with them this morning before I flew here. Little did I know I tear out my pants, the seat of my pants getting in the car, so I got a quick suit change. And they still made my flight here. But these men and women in the Border Patrol, they're taking so much hate, whether it's on the border in the interior United States with helping us on these operations. These men and women are patriots. They put their lives on the line for this country every day. I want people to remember, despite all the hate coming their way, they don't hang their hearts on a hook every day to come to work. These are moms and dads too, and they've seen a lot of terrible things in their career. So God bless those men and women, because at 3 o'clock this morning, where most of us are sleeping in our bed, there was a Border Patrol agent standing on a dirt trail on the southern border, responding to a sensor being going off. They don't know if it's just an illegal alien looking for a better life or a heavily armed drug smuggler. They're going to stand there and take it on. These men and women are the greatest people I've ever had the honor of working with. So God bless them. Most secure border in the history of this nation, and the data proves it. So President Trump's leadership did it again, except this time we beat Trump 45 numbers. We're at an all-time low. Number two, run the largest deportation. Like, first of all, when he gave me these three things, I said, border's not going to be a problem. We did it once before. That's going to be easier. So I didn't even hesitate, saying, yeah, we'll take care of that. Number two, run the largest deportation operation in the history of the nation. I knew we have no problem with that because Joe Biden released over 10 million into the country. Add that to another 12 million or 13 million is already here. We got over 20 million. I don't care what anybody else says. I've been doing this a long time. They've been using that 12 million here illegally for 2 decades. No, we're beyond 20. We know at least 10.5 came to our border. We know we got at least 2 million known gotaways. People that are caught on video, drone traffic, sensor traffic, that enter the country, were not apprehended, were not vetted. We don't know who they are, where they come from, or why they're here. That should scare the hell out of everybody. It does me. So running deportation operation. I looked at the numbers this morning on the airframe over here. Since Donald Trump's been in office, we have just shy of 550,000 removals. Where does that stand in comparison? The biggest year we had was under President Obama. We had 409,000. So we beat that by over 100,000. And that's not even fiscal year. I'm only counting to January 20th to now. We're not even counting the first 4 months of the fiscal year, which was under Biden presidency, where they weren't doing anything. But if you extrapolate the 8 months we did and the average monthly deportations and add those 4 months in at our current rate, we're well over 500,000 deportations just by ICE alone, which is a record for this country. You add to that 1.6 million self-deportations. We're well over 2 million aliens leaving this country since President Trump took the Oval Office. Over 2 million. That is extraordinary. And people say, well, how do you take credit for the self-removals? You know why? Because we've got over 1,000 ICE teams out on the streets every day enforcing the immigration law, actually arresting those that are in the country illegally. The last administration didn't do it. The last administrations were under this instruction from Secretary Mayorkas. You can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. They got to be convicted of a serious crime before you can even target them for arrest. He basically rewrote federal law. ICE officers couldn't uphold the oath they took. Border Patrol agents weren't able to uphold the oath they took. They felt like tourist guides and Uber drivers. ICE officers, they couldn't enforce immigration law. Things have changed with this president. So there is a record number of deportations. We got a lot more to do. We got a lot more that's coming. Thanks to the big, beautiful bill, we're going to 10,000 more deportation officers. What does that mean? We got about 5,000 right now. So we're going to triple the size of the workforce, which means triple the number of arrests, which means triple the number of deportations. And I want to make one thing clear. ICE isn't out there intentionally separating families, arresting people that have been here for 50 years, or have children with cancer. The bottom line is I look at the data every day. every day, about 22 pages of data I review on the way to work. Last time I looked at the data, right around 70% of everybody ICE arrests is a criminal. Either a criminal conviction or pending criminal charges, which means we found them in the jail. Who are the other 30%? Many of them are final orders deportation. They had due process at great taxpayer expense. They were ordered removed by a federal judge. They didn't leave, they became a fugitive. Yeah, we're looking for them. We're going to enforce the law. We're going to send a message to the whole world. It's not okay to enter this country illegally. It's a crime. It's not okay to ignore a federal judge's order and become a fugitive. You had your due process. Federal judge says you must go home. You got to go home. Our job is to execute those final orders. That is in statute. That is ICE is sworn to do. That is what we are appropriated to do, and that's what we're doing. So the other 30%, a lot of them are fugitives. The other ones are gang members. And law enforcement in this room, you know a lot of gang members don't have a criminal history. Finally, we've arrested thousands of national security threats. I think we're at 3,000 Iranian nationals that are national security threats. So most national security threats don't have criminal conviction because they're laying low under the radar to do the dirty deed. That's what we're arresting. Now, have we arrested people that aren't national security threats, aren't criminals, aren't gang members, and aren't criminals? Yes, we do. And where do we do most of those arrests? In sanctuary cities. And why is that? Because we can't arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a jail. We're safer for the agent, safer for the alien, and safer for the public. Releasing a public safety threat back in the public when you don't have to is just stupid. So when the sanctuary cities force us into the neighborhood to find that criminal alien, many times he's with others. Others, they may not be a criminal threat. They're here illegally. Well, they're coming too. We're not turning a blind eye to the oath we took. Sanctuary cities are going to get exactly what they don't want. More agents in the community, more worksite enforcement, because we can't find the bad guy in the neighborhood, we'll find him at a worksite. And they're going to get more collateral arrests. So if you want less collateral arrests, let us in the jail to talk to the person that you locked in the jail cell. And the sanctuary cities will give this false premise that, well, we're a sanctuary city, we're a welcoming community, because we want victims and witnesses of a crime in the immigrant community to feel comfortable coming to us without fear we're working with ICE. That's a bunch of crap. Because the victims and witnesses of crime don't want the bad guy back in their neighborhood either. Matter of fact, if we knew who the victim was, they could get a visa as a victim of crime. We're not looking to talk to the victim witness. We're looking to talk to the person you locked up in a jail cell for obvious reasons, either a public safety threat or flight risk, whatever. That's the person we want. So, the false narrative saying we're protecting immigrant communities, no, you're not. Who's MS-13 in TDA? Who do they assault most? The immigrant community. So putting criminals back in the immigrant community doesn't make sense. So the sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals, and President Trump and Pam Bondi's going to sue every one of them and take them to court, because I think it's a violation of federal law. I think you talk about harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE. You're talking about impeding ICE officers from doing their job. And they need to be held accountable, and God bless Pam Bondi. I think she's going to hold them accountable. She already started. The last thing, 300,000 children. Last administration, over 500,000 children were smuggled or trafficked into the United States, separated from their families and put in the hands of criminal cartels. God knows what happened to some of these children in the hands of criminal cartels. They want to attack the Trump administration, Tom Homan, and zero tolerance under Trump 45. That was about saving lives. People were dying every day, women and children being sexually assaulted. We decided, no, let's prosecute those who violate the law, enter this country illegally, and maybe they stop coming. And they did. It dropped 25% within 2 weeks. However, it's unfortunate as it is, when you prosecute a parent, the child can't go to jail with them, so there was separation. I've been in law enforcement since 1983. It's sad when you separate parents from children. I did it as a police officer when I arrested a parent for domestic violence, or a parent was driving DUI with a child in the car. It's unfortunate you got to call CPS to get the child. But illegal aliens don't get a different set of rules. You commit a crime, you're being prosecuted, you're going to be separated. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to decrease the amount of sexual assaults. We're trying to convince families, don't put yourselves in harm's way. Don't put yourselves in the hands of criminal cartels to swim across the river and maybe die or get assaulted. This administration allowed 500,000 children to be trafficked across this border in the hands of criminal cartels. And the administration released them to unvetted sponsors or not appropriate vetted sponsors. And why do I say that? Because now that we have the data, we have the records, many of these sponsors weren't fingerprinted. Many of the addresses were not double-checked to verify it's actually an address and someone lived there. Much of the identification provided was not authenticated and verified it's actually them. Releasing a 9-year-old unrelated to an adult male, a 9-year-old female to an unrelated adult male without proper vetting, I mean, what the hell were they thinking? Secretary Becerra, who ran HHS, I saw him on stage several times bragging how quick they released these children from government housing to sponsors. He played the same game they did at Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas. Process quick, release quick. Because if there's no overcrowding, there's nothing to see here, and we can keep saying this is a secure border. Pathetic. Disgusting. So I told the President, out of the 3 things you gave me, this is the hardest. And why is that? Because we can find you. We can find me. We have a digital footprint. You own a home. You got a car. You got credit cards. You pay utility bills. We can find you. How do we find a child? Well, we have to count on the paperwork of the sponsor. And if that paperwork wasn't vetted and done right, it's almost useless too. So we're out there every day looking for these children. Looking for children the last administration wasn't looking for. Over 65,000 calls were made by the children or the sponsors back to HHS for concern. How many of those calls were answered? 0. How many calls did the Trump administration answer? Every single one of them. A lot of the addresses we go to are parking lots, grocery stores, churches. But you know, because of men and women of HHS and ICE, we've rescued almost 24,000 of these children. And we're not going to stop until we run every lead down. And when we finish running those leads down, we're going to do it again. So what I ask from you all is to deputize our entire community. Parents have this special ability to know when there's something not right with a child, where you see a child that shouldn't be in that workplace, or you see a child that just, you know something's wrong. That child is not safe. That child's not supposed to be there. Make a phone call to ICE. Even if 1 in 1,000 phone calls saves the child, then God bless you. So this is a national issue we all must address. But I'll give you my word standing here today. Despite all the hate and all the attacks on me, Tom Homan isn't going anywhere. Tom Homan is going to finish the job I promised President Trump I was going to do. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Thank you. I appreciate that. And one more thing. In closing, let me say this. When you stood up here talking about the legislation, I was like a kid in a candy store sitting down here. Hopefully that becomes law. Folks, I know Indiana stepped up with some detention operations. I know your law enforcement officers want to do the right thing. Look, when it comes to the detainer issue, I'll tell you right now, you don't have to hold them a minute past you normally hold them on the detainer. Just call ICE before you release them, and we'll be right there. That's all, you know, that's at the least. If people say, we're going to litigate you if you hold them for ICE, in case there's some litigation. But you already talked about indemnification for the government, indemnification for 287G partners. You get sued, we got it. But even if at the very least, you just contact us before he walks out, we'll be there to meet him. This is going to make our communities that much safer. Every day, ICE agents are out there arresting public safety threats and national security threats. The attacks on them are up over 1,000%. It's incredible the death threats coming our way. I have not lived with my family since March because I don't want my family with me right now. I expect it because I'm the border czar and I got a big mouth. But the protesters, I saw protesters here today and I got excited because when I go give a speech, there's not protesters. That means your message isn't getting out. I like protesters. My security detail hates it when I say that. But the men and women of ICE, the ones carrying the badge on their hip and wearing that Kevlar vest, like the law enforcement officers in this room, they're just enforcing the law. And people want to hate on ICE. If you don't like what ICE is doing, especially members of Congress who compare them to terrorists, Nazi, the Gestapo, shame on you. They're enforcing laws that you wrote. If you don't like what ICE is doing, then change the law. If they're a racist for enforcing the law, what's that make you? You wrote the law. We're not making this stuff up. So if you would, please help President Trump. I think it's a great bill. Anything I can do to help or the White House can do to help, maybe I know I got to watch what I do legislatively because, hatch act and all the other stuff. I don't even understand it. But I talk to ethics attorney every day to keep myself out of trouble. But whatever you can do, state of Indiana, to help us make Indiana safer. I'm not saying every illegal alien is a public safety threat, but many are. Help us. Because every public safety threat we remove from this country makes your neighborhood safer. God bless you all, and thanks for the invite, sir.
God bless you, Tom Homan. God bless you. Thank you for your powerful words. Appreciate you. And appreciate all of you being here. This concludes our program. Tom, I'm so sorry that you haven't seen your family in so long. Can't believe I'm hearing that. Kendra, thank you for your words. Especially your heartbreaking story. Remind us all why we're here. I want to thank Governor Braun as well. Chad Wolf did an excellent job. Representative Prescott, thank you for your leadership. To the members of the General Assembly and in the audience, your presence signals your dedication to tackling this issue for all Hoosiers, and we thank you. Your support is crucial to making the Fairness Act a reality. Together, we've painted a clear picture today. Illegal immigration threatens our safety, our economy, and our shared Hoosier values. So let's get the Fairness Act passed into law this session. Thank you very much.